Cricket has always celebrated the loudest heroes, the aggressive captains, the fearless hitters, the emotional leaders. But the most dangerous player is often the quiet one. While the world watched power hitters and fast bowlers, one man worked in silence. No celebrations, no noise, no drama, just runs. Joe Root was not built for headlines, he was built for survival. And when England needed someone to carry the game on his shoulders, the silent man answered. This is not the story of a loud legend. This is the story of the calmest storm in cricket. Joe Root did not grow up in luxury. He grew up in cold streets, under gray skies, in a city that respected toughness more than talent. Sheffield was unforgiving. Cold mornings, empty pitches, hard ground. He was small, quiet, invisible. His gloves swallowed his hands. His pads dragged on the ground. Older boys hit harder, ran faster, shouted louder. Joe did not fight them. He watched, he studied, he memorized everything. Where feet landed, where shoulders turned, how heads stayed still, how balance was held. There was a silence inside him, a silence that people thought was weakness. But inside that silence was control. Cricket was not noise for him. It was a language, and he wanted to master it more than anyone else. Life does not soften for quiet people. One loss changed everything. When Joe lost someone close, something shifted inside him. Cricket stopped being a game. It became a mission. Pain did not break him. It sharpened him. He trained alone. When others laughed, he practiced. When others slept, he refined. He was not chasing fame. He was chasing meaning. That was the day the boy stopped being quiet and started becoming dangerous. Rise and internal conflict. His rise was not loud, not fast, not dramatic. It was slow, precise, relentless. His bat did not scream. It whispered, but the scoreboards spoke louder than words. England started to rely on him, expect him, need him. He smiled, but inside, pressure grew heavier. How long could he hold them all? How long could silence survive chaos? He did not come back with noise. He did not come back with fire. He did not come back trying to impress anyone. He came back trying to survive. After the storm inside him grew too loud to ignore, Joe Root made the hardest decision of all. He chose to rebuild, not his image, not his reputation, but himself. He stopped listening to headlines. He stopped reading opinions. He stopped trying to be the player that others wanted him to be. Instead, he returned to the only thing he could trust, the basics. He walked into empty practice nets long before sunrise. There were no cameras, no coaches calling his name, no crowd watching his every move. Only him, the bat, the ball. He started from the ground up. Grip, stance, balance. Every detail was examined, every weakness was faced instead of hidden. The beauty of his comeback was that it was invisible. It was not dramatic. It was not broadcasted, but it was real. He hit thousands of balls that no one recorded. He practiced shots that no one applauded. He left deliveries that no one praised. He trained not like a superstar, but like a beginner. Slowly, his feet started to trust the ground again. His eyes began to read the ball earlier. His mind began to quiet down. The bat started to feel like home again. When runs returned, they did not feel like revenge. They felt like confirmation. He was not trying to silence critics. He was not chasing headlines. He was chasing peace. Match by match, he began to look like himself, but more refined, more patient, more grounded. His movements became smoother. His timing became cleaner. People talked about his form. The form was not what changed. His mind had changed. He no longer played with fear. He played with acceptance. He understood that pressure would never disappear, but he could meet it without panic. He stopped fighting chaos. He stopped fearing silence. He embraced both. This comeback was different from others. There were no dramatic speeches, no emotional interviews, no public tears. There was only discipline, daily, invisible discipline. When he walked out to bat again at the highest level, opponents did not see a wounded man. They saw patience. They saw control. They saw a man who had already faced his worst enemy and survived. That enemy was not bowlers, it was himself. And once he conquered that, the rest felt manageable. That is why his comeback mattered. It was not loud. It was not theatrical. It was honest. The world grew quiet, but Joe Root grew louder through silence. In 2021, cricket looked different. Empty stadiums, echoing voices, a sport stripped of its normal chaos. For many players, the silence felt uncomfortable. For Joe Root, it felt familiar. He had lived in silence for most of his career. He had trained in silence. He had suffered in silence. He had rebuilt himself in silence. Now, the world was silent with him. When he walked to the crease, there were no roaring crowds to lift him, no angry chants to shake him, no noise to hide behind. Only the pure game. The ball against the bat, the sound of his breath, the rhythm of his feet. He started building innings that did not feel rushed. He was not chasing boundaries. He was controlling time. Each session felt like a lesson in patience. Each over felt like a quiet war. While others struggled with the empty atmosphere, he thrived inside it. He scored double centuries, not with explosions, but with elegance. His innings felt like stories written slowly, line by line. England began to lean on him more than ever, not just for runs, but for calm. When wickets fell quickly, he stayed. When pressure grew, he slowed down. When panic crept in, he removed it. His bat did not shout. It spoke clearly. The sound of the ball hitting the middle of the bat echoed across silent stadiums. That clean, sharp sound became a symbol of purity. This was the defining moment of his career, not because of records, but because of control. He did not chase greatness. He did not demand recognition. He simply performed his craft with rare clarity. Photographs from that time captured something special. A man standing still, a world moving around him. The climax of his story was not chaos. It was calm. While the cricket world looked for fire, he delivered ice. While others searched for energy, he brought balance. His performances were not just about winning matches. They were about reminding the world what timeless technique looked like. By the end of that year, he did not need words. His bat had spoken enough. Records were broken. Critics were silenced. Questions were answered. But none of that mattered most. What mattered was this. He had perfected the art of quiet dominance. And in that quiet dominance, he reached the peak of his journey.
Joe Root's legacy does not live in noise. It lives in precision. It lives in balance. It lives in the quiet corners of cricket where real craft is built. Most cricketers are remembered for power, for aggression, for dramatic moments that shake stadiums. Joe Root is remembered for control. He did not inspire young players with speeches. He inspired them with structure, with posture, with patience. In cricket academies around the world, coaches pause footage of his batting. They highlight his head position. They draw lines to show the straightness of his bat. They explain how stillness creates power. Young players do not imitate his voice. They imitate his stance. This is the rarest type of influence. He did not just score runs. He changed habits. Bowlers respected him because he never gave them easy victories. They could bowl perfect deliveries and still be punished with placement instead of violence. Fielding captains built entire plans just for him. Special fields, rotating bowlers, psychological traps. But he stood still through all of it. His greatness was not about domination. It was about erosion. He eroded bowling attacks with time, with patience, with discipline. This kind of player becomes a reference point, not just in England, but in India, in Pakistan, in Australia, in South Africa. Players learning the cover drive were told, watch Root. Players learning defense were told, watch Root. His legacy reached beyond numbers, beyond centuries, beyond scorecards. It reached the mindset. He taught the cricketing world that control is not passive, that calmness is not softness, that silence is not weakness. As cricket formats evolved, as power hitting became the trend, his technique stayed relevant. It did not look old-fashioned. It looked correct. That is the difference. Power fades. Technique remains. Years from now, when batting styles change again, when new shots are invented, his method will still make sense because fundamentals do not age. Joe Root will not be remembered as the loudest. He will not be remembered as the most aggressive. He will be remembered as the most complete. A batsman who treated cricket like a language, not a battle. And languages, when mastered, never die. That is why his legacy is not trapped in highlight reels. It is alive in coaching manuals, in training drills, in the quiet dreams of young players. He was not a trend. He was a foundation.
The story of Joe Root was never meant to be loud. It was never designed to shake stadiums with noise or fill headlines with drama. It was built in silence, carried with discipline, and finished with control. In a sport that celebrates fire, aggression, and chaos, he chose something harder. He chose stillness. He chose patience. He chose understanding. He walked onto cricket fields not to scare opponents, but to outlast them. He did not chase fear. He chased timing. He did not chase noise. He chased rhythm. That made him different. When crowds cheered, he stayed calm. When critics attacked, he stayed silent. When expectations rose, he stayed grounded. He never needed to change who he was to survive in a sport that rewards loud personalities. He simply became better at being himself. His journey shows that restraint can be more powerful than aggression, that quiet focus can outlast raw energy, that discipline can defeat chaos. He did not rise by shouting. He rose by standing still when everything around him tried to move him. At the end of his journey, there was no grand speech. There was no dramatic farewell. There was only respect. Respect from teammates. Respect from opponents. Respect from the game itself. He left behind more than statistics. He left behind a philosophy, a way of playing, a way of thinking, a way of breathing under pressure. His story does not end with a trophy lifted high. It ends with a lesson left behind. You do not have to be the loudest to be remembered. You do not have to be the strongest to be respected. You do not have to be the most aggressive to be feared. You only have to be the most controlled. Joe Root showed that silence can be strength, that calm can be dangerous, that patience can be deadly. In the end, the game did not remember him for anger. It remembered him for mastery. And mastery does not shout. It does not beg for attention. It does not demand applause. It simply exists. That is why his story will last longer than noise ever could. That is why his name will stay relevant when trends change, when formats evolve, and when generations pass. This was never a story of chaos. This was a story of control. This was not the story of a man who tried to be loud. This was the story of a man who mastered silence.